The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the QATV staff or board of directors. QATV, in compliance with FCC regulations, is prohibited from exercising control over the content of independent, member-produced public access programming.
Hello and welcome, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Sheila Wilson. I am a registered nurse and I'm president of Stop Healthcare Violence. I co-founded Stop Healthcare Violence back in 2009 with the mission to educate and inform the public of the alarming epidemic of violence committed against healthcare personnel, provide support and advocacy for victims, and lobby for legislation change. I have a guest with me tonight. Her name is Paula Murray, and she's also a registered nurse. I would like her to give you an idea of what truly happens when we're in the emergency room and the healthcare, the violence that happens. The M&A, which is the Mass Nurses Association and the Emergency Nurses Association, say through their surveys that 70 to 80% of your healthcare workers are assaulted. And truly, being assaulted is not part of the job. Would you welcome Paula Murray? Thank you.
Nice to see you, Sheila.
Thank you. You can talk.
You want me to go?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hi, my name's Paula Murray and I'm a registered nurse. I worked at Kearney Hospital. I actually started at Kearney in 1965 as a high school volunteer, and then kind of went up the ranks. Ended up being the charge nurse in the emergency room. On March 3rd, 2011, at 7:12 p.m., my life changed. My life as I knew it was over. I was coming in from triage, and the X-ray room was under construction. I could hear like a scuffle going on. When I went into the X-ray room to investigate, the security guard, his name was Matt, was on the ground. He was being punched and kicked, and the kid was just really ramming him. He kept punching him and punching him and punching him. So obviously I called for help. We called for security. We called them to come to the emergency room stat, which means immediately. There was one security guard in the ER as assigned, but that was a security guard that was being assaulted. So we ended up attempting to restrain the patient, and I ended up getting pinned. He took my arm and he whipped me around hard enough that he tore my rotator cuff and he tore my biceps tendon. My biceps tendon was in two pieces. One was coiled down on my elbow and the other was up in my shoulder. He also kicked a nurse by the name of Tara. She went flying back, and he was able to do something to Barbara. She's not sure whether he punched her or what he did, but she had a hip injury. So 4 people got hurt, and it was totally 100% preventable. When you work in the emergency room, and you get a lot of psych patients, the Boston Emergency Service team comes. Well, it was their first day, and we had a lot of psych patients, and we asked for an extra sitter. It got denied. We were told by the nursing supervisor, do the best you can with what you got. We said it's really unsafe. We'd like to have a little bit more security, or at least another sitter. That got denied. And as a result, 4 people who worked there got injured. I ended up having to have major surgery on my shoulder. They had to reattach the rotator cuff. They repaired that. The biceps tendon they could not fix because it was too coiled. I was out of work obviously for a while, but it was it was a very traumatic experience, and it was horrific. Everybody was black and blue. All of us were black and blue from where we got kicked. When I went to court, I pressed charges, and when I went to court, they had me watch the video of the assault, and the part that was on video, which was not the part of Matt on the ground, or him pulling my arm and twisting me so violently. But the rest of it was on film and on camera. I ended up with all kinds of health issues because of the violence. My health got robbed. I got robbed of my job. I got robbed of everything. I ended up with PTSD, which I didn't even know I had, but I definitely do have it. I ended up going to New England Baptist Hospital. I had my shoulder repaired on June 1st, 2011, after I begged the employee health physician, please, there's something really wrong with me. I need an MRI. And finally they consented. Excuse me. Ooh. Barbara ended up going to physical therapy. Tara was a single parent. She had to go home, and she had a huge black eye from him kicking her. It was her whole side of her face that turned black and blue. I had black and blues on both of my arms from him. He dug his fingers in my arms and left the imprint of his hand. And I actually had to medicate him because the emergency room was so busy. After he assaulted the four of us, I sedated him. When I went to sedate him, at this point I had 2 security guards and 2 EMTs that were helping us just get him under control. And when he was in 4-point restraints, but because there was just so much going on, one of the restraints wasn't placed on properly, so he was able to get my right arm. First he injured my left, then he got my right arm, and just kept digging his fingers into it as I was trying to medicate him. So they had to obviously help me get my wrist out from the grip that he had. After that, we all went in. They called it a debriefing. They had us look at the film. This is administration. They had us look at the film, and they decided that Matt used excessive force, which he didn't. Matt was doing his job. He ended up getting let go because of the incident. And Barbara, Tara, and myself, we continued to have multiple problems. On August 14th, I went to a wedding, and I drove 2.5 to 3 hours. And when I got to the wedding, I got on a bus, and after the wedding, I stood up, and my right ankle just proned out, and I fell to the ground. So I tried it a second time, I fell to the ground. I tried it a third time, and my left ankle gave out. I was unable to walk. I went to the emergency room. I got diagnosed. I had a fractured left ankle, and I had a sprained right ankle. They think that when I got assaulted, they think that one of the discs was bulging, and because of the assault, and they couldn't figure anything out. So that's what they're telling me, that I had a disc injury from the assault, and that because I drove, it was bulging, but it popped out, and then because I was unable to walk, it popped back in. I had an MRI, and I had bulging discs, so that's what they surmised anyways. But my health has been deteriorating rapidly since I was assaulted. With PTSD, it is real, I'm telling you right now. One night I woke up in August of 2011, and my heart was racing. I was 4+ diaphoretic, which means I was soaking wet from sweat. And I didn't really know what happened, but because I was applying for disability, I had to be seen by a psychiatrist. And he said to me, well, you know what you have PTSD. I said, oh, I never thought about that. So he said, well, you have it, that's for sure, after the trauma that you went through. And I asked him, I said, well, I got assaulted in March. Why am I having problems in August? He told me it was because the human body has a way of protecting itself. So my shoulder needed to be taken care of. And then once my shoulder was starting to feel better, he said, your body just moved on. And so I got diagnosed with the PTSD. When I went back to work, one of the things I forgot was when they created a job for me at Kearney that I loved. And I was doing like flu shots, and I was going around the hospital doing TB tests. And while I was doing that, the nurse who is from risk management comes up and she hands me a summons for court. And she said to me, tell me what happened, and I told her and everything. And she looked at me and she said, well, what do you expect? You work in the emergency room. People are getting violent. I said, well, you're a nurse and you chose to do human resources. And risk management, I'm a nurse and I chose to work in the emergency room. I save lives. I felt, she said to me, well, that's what happens in emergency rooms. I said, well, that's not what's supposed to happen. I said, nobody should go to work and be unsafe at work, especially if it's a preventable situation. What else would you like me?
Well, Paula, I was just reading a study, and 1 out of every 4 nurses have PTSD. The girl that was punched in the face, she had terrible PTSD. The fellow that punched her had a trach, which his breathing was very different. And she could hear that breathing up and down the corridors. She couldn't work anymore in the emergency room. She went back to her old place, and still she couldn't stay there. And so she's out of the hospitals altogether. And being assaulted is not part of the job, but with the legislation now, there are 2 bills, one by Senator Brady and one by Representative Paul Tucker. And Paul Tucker is from Salem, and he used to be on the police force, and then he became the chief of police in Salem, and now he's a representative. The assault bill is, I'm going to read it because I didn't memorize it. It says, an act strengthening the penalty for assault or assault and battery on emergency medical technician, ambulance operator, ambulance attendant, or healthcare provider. These are 2 bills. Senator bill is 838 and Representative Tucker's bill is 1578. If you believe that being assaulted on the job as a healthcare worker is not okay, please give them a call or write them or see them in person. The other thing is, being assaulted can cause more than, as you heard Paula discuss, your health care just dissipates. You're really hurt. The PTS kicks in. You also have all sorts of issues. And if Paula told you all the other issues that she's sustained, maybe from the assault, I don't know. But it's a real epidemic. Please be very supportive of all your nurses that you know. Ask them. Ask them if they get assaulted. Ask them if they talk about it. Do they write out incident reports? Now, people will say that, oh, you can't charge people with assault and get a felony. Of course, Massachusetts only has a misdemeanor. 34 other states have a felony. And hopefully there'll be enough people that take notice and call their representatives and senators to maybe change that. I'm going to have Paula talk again about the court, because she brought this gentleman to court, and it will be very interesting.
Hi, I press charges. Against the patient that assaulted me. I had to go to Dorchester District Court, and Connie sent a security guard with us the first time. Barbara, Tara, myself, and one security guard came. with us. Boston Police met us there, and we discussed what was going on. And the patient that assaulted me came in, and he was high. He was impaired. So they ended up taking him out, and he said he was suicidal. So they brought him back to the emergency room, and we left. It's a very difficult process to press charges. You're in and out of court. I have custody of my grandson, so I had to get a sitter every time. I had to take time off from work just to press charges. He was found guilty on all accounts, and the judge actually added another issue, because he had the boots that he used to kick me were work boots with a steel plate toe. So they added assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, the weapon being his shoes. He was found guilty. He was given 5 years probation. He had to be compliant with his medication, and he had to keep all his psychiatric appointments. And he had a parole officer. And that was the end of that part. But I had with the judge. The judge was, the judge looked at the film at least 12 times, and he kept saying, "Tell me what's going on here, tell me what's going on there." So I watched myself being kicked and assaulted, being pinned in between a wall, and unable to get out. We had to have security on the day that I got assaulted. One security guard was watching the cameras, or allegedly watching the cameras. The other security guard was assigned to the emergency room. That's who got assaulted. And the third security guard was on the psych floor with a problematic patient up there. So I also went to court in Boston, and Detective Moore, once the case was settled and everything, the judge talked to the lawyer for Stewart and just said that they needed to really review their safety measures and enhance them in many ways. I was driving home, and I got a phone call from the Boston detective, who was absolutely wonderful. And he said to me, "I don't want you to think justice was done today, because it wasn't." He said, "With your assault," he said, that the detectives should have been called immediately. They were not. He said that the patient that assaulted me, he thought should have gotten a little bit of jail time. But he was wonderful. The Boston police detective was excellent. And one of the things I did not say is that when we pressed charges, all four of us were gonna stick together, and I was the only one that actually followed through. And when the Boston police came, after we called them twice, we had a direct phone that goes to the Boston Police Department. We had to call them twice. The second time they came, and they looked at the video, and they were laughing and giggling. And one of the guys said, "We wouldn't want to meet you. We wouldn't want to meet you ladies in a dark alley." And the other security guard said, quote unquote, "There's more violence in this emergency room than there is on the street." So,
well, thank you, Paula, for giving us your story. That really, that was 2011, and the violence is continuing, and it's even worse.
It's much worse.
It is much worse. Thank you. Thank you again for tuning in. This is Sheila Wilson, President of Stop Healthcare Violence.